The morning train was unusually crowded, the kind of chaos that felt heavier than the metal of the rail cars themselves. People pushed in waves, each trying to fit into a space that barely existed. The air held the usual mixture of impatience and exhaustion that accompanied a weekday commute. Among the crowd stood a teenage boy named Evan, quiet high school senior, who always caught the 7:12 train to reach his early math class. He had learned over the years how to blend into the rhythm of the city, eyes down, headphones in, mind somewhere far from the present. Today, however, was different in a way he couldn't name yet. Evan managed to slip into one of the last available seats, grateful for the chance to sit before the 40-minute ride, his backpack overstuffed with textbooks and the half-finished assignments he kept promising himself to complete, leaned against his legs. The train screeched forward, rattling slightly as it picked up speed along the steel tracks. The passengers shifted around him, a nurse in pale scrubs resting her head against the window, a businessman flipping through emails, a mother trying to calm her toddler. Everyone seemed absorbed in their own small worlds. Evan settled in, trying to lose himself in the soft hum of the moving train. It was the one place where he didn't have to think about overdue essays, part-time jobs, or the unspoken tension at home that had been growing since his father lost his job. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the motion of the train lull his senses. Then the train jolted to a stop at the next station. More passengers piled in, a surge of bodies, faces, and hurried footsteps. Among them was an elderly woman, stepping slowly with the careful precision of someone who knew her balance could betray her at any moment. She wore a faded brown coat, buttoned all the way up, despite the mild weather. Her hands shook slightly as she grasped the metal pole, her knuckles pale under thin skin. Evan opened his eyes just enough to notice her. A quick glance around the car told him what he already suspected. There were no empty seats left. Dozens of people, from teens to adults, sat comfortably, eyes glued to their phones, choosing the easy blindness that convenience offered. Some even noticed the elderly woman and quickly looked away. Evan's heartbeat picked up. He knew the feeling well, that quiet moral tug that whispered inside him whenever he saw something unfair. It was the same tug that made him share his lunch with a classmate who always pretended he wasn't hungry, the same tug that made him volunteer to help his teacher clean after class, even when he was already late for work. But helping cost energy. Energy he didn't feel like he had today. For a moment, he hesitated. The woman adjusted her grip on the pole, her frail body trembling slightly with the motion of the train. The lights flickered overhead, briefly casting shadows across her lined face. She looked exhausted in a way that went beyond age, as if she carried memories that weighed more than time itself. Evan's chest tightened. Then, that he couldn't sit still. Silently, he rose from his seat and stepped back, gesturing subtly for her to sit. The woman looked stunned for a brief instant, as though she hadn't expected kindness in a place where it had become so rare. She moved slowly toward the seat and eased herself down, one careful breath at a time. Her hands relaxed against her lap, resting in a way that suggested relief as much as gratitude. Evan, now standing in the crowded aisle, wrapped one hand around the cool metal bar. Steadying himself as the train lurched forward again, his back ached already from the weight of his backpack, but he told himself it was fine. He had endured worse. A part of him even felt lighter, knowing he had done the right thing, but something unexpected lingered in the air. The elderly woman kept glancing up at him from the seat he had surrendered. At first, he thought it was simple appreciation, the kind strangers often exchanged, but her gaze carried a depth he couldn't explain. Not surprise, not gratitude, recognition, as though she had seen a face like his before, as though something about him stirred a memory she hadn't touched in years. Evan felt her eyes on him more than once, but each time he met her gaze, she quickly looked down. Her hands trembled slightly against the fabric of her coat. A faint sadness seemed to settle over her features, the kind that did not come from pain or inconvenience, but from something deeply human: regret, nostalgia, or perhaps unfinished stories. The train rattled on, and Evan could not help but wonder why she looked at him like that. They passed station after station, the morning sun slowly rising, painting streaks of gold across the windows. With each passing minute, the car grew emptier as people exited, leaving pockets of silence behind. Yet despite the growing number of seats, the elderly woman remained quietly still, her attention occasionally drifting toward Evan with a mysterious heaviness. When the train reached the halfway point of Evan's journey, the car was nearly empty. He found himself standing just a few feet away from her now. The quiet of the space emphasized the fragile sound of her breathing. Slow and deliberate, her gaze lifted once more. This time, she didn't look away. Instead, she studied his face as if searching for something buried in the lines and shapes that only she could understand. There was a strange trembling in her expression, part wonder, part disbelief, part sorrow. Evan felt a chill race down his spine. He wanted to ask if she was all right, but he reminded himself he wasn't supposed to speak to strangers on public transportation. And besides, he didn't want to intrude. Yet a growing curiosity tugged at him. Why did she keep staring at him like he was someone she used to know? The train slowed again as they approached another station. The doors hissed open. A cold breeze swept through the nearly empty car. The elderly woman rose, slowly, deliberately, as if the decision had cost her something. She adjusted her coat, steadying herself with the pole. Her eyes lifted toward Evan. Once more this time, full of unspoken meaning that he couldn't unravel, she stepped toward the exit. Pausing for a moment at the doorway, for the briefest second, she looked as though she wanted to speak, or turn back, or say something only he was meant to hear. But whatever the thought was, she held it inside. Then she stepped off the train, the doors closed behind her. Evan remained frozen in place, staring at the spot where she had stood. His heart pounded with a mixture of confusion and unease. The woman's behavior made no sense, yet something about her presence lingered like an unfinished sentence, heavy with hidden truths. As the train pulled away from the platform, he felt a quiet shift in the air, a change he couldn't explain but knew mattered. He had given up his seat out of simple kindness, but he had no idea that the woman he helped was far more connected to his life than he could imagine, and soon he would learn the truth that would change everything.